Do you know the image we always narrate when telling the story of human evolution? The one we like to put on book covers, t-shirts, and mugs, thus allowing it to be a summary of the unknown past. It's the image that always starts with a cramped, bulky Australopithecus slowly uncurling into a Homo erectus, often depicted with a mace on its shoulder, and finally straightening into a Homo sapiens. Always a man, always mid-stride. And did you know that during that final stage of evolution, our brains underwent an incomparably rapid growth that led to a creation of this species? That growth also gained unparalleled momentum in the recent decades. We went from writing letters for over 2 millennia to creating a pocket-sized device that could support our daily functioning in merely 30 years. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, pretty much all aspects of our daily lives skyrocketed in development. In 1903, when the first airplane was invented, the whole of humanity seemed to have jumped on it. And I don't think we ever landed. I think we are all still flying that plane, getting higher and higher into a sky of growth and consumerism, into a sky of a developing economy. And to try and make ourselves feel better, we market that growth more appropriately. We market it as a wonder only the human species could have caused. We are programmed to think of it as a miracle for world trade, as a resolution for companies. The obsession over GDP, gross domestic product, in governments worldwide has been progressing since the last century. Politicians started thinking that increasing it is the only solution to their problems. But also, our obsession over comfort, over instant gratification grew, overshadowing everything else. We have become financially, socially, politically, and economically addicted to growth. And I think that the way in which that growth is happening may be detrimental to all of us. Because our way of growing doesn't only implicate technological development. It also implies overpopulation, pandemics, wars. It implies humans taking up too much space, wasting too many natural resources, recklessly burning fossil fuels, and gradually demolishing everything around us. So, the first question I want to put out there is, what happens if we keep growing like we are growing now? As we all know, the global GDP has been skyrocketing of late. It is already 10 times bigger than it was 60 years ago, and if we keep up the current growth, it will show a spectacular increase by 2050. GDP is expected to grow at an average annual rate of 4.6%, which could lead to the world's economy doubling in size. A heaven for companies, for public trade, for sure, but would it be a heaven for all? Some predictions say that such growth would lead to truly astounding innovations. For example, a website called 2050 Earth claims that in 30 years, 3D printed snack bars are to appear in New York. By that same time, 80% of homes in Washington will be served by robots, and Dubai is to build a floating skyscraper. And all that sounds remarkable, truly. Yet here, one problem appears. If we keep up the current way of growing, we will not reach the sustainable goal of 1.5 degrees global warming by 2050. In truth, a recent UN news study claims that our commitments are not sufficient enough to prevent a temperature rise of even 2 degrees, let alone 1.5. So, if we keep up the current way of growing, rising temperatures, devastating storms, flash floods, climate migrations, drinkable water limitations, and overall disasters will appear on the daily agenda very soon. Right now, that plane we are all still flying is on a straight trajectory, getting closer and closer to the sun. And we all know what happens to things when they get too close to it, right? They burn. So, if we keep up the current way of growing, if we don't stop the obsession over consumerism, if we don't stop the programmed greed and selfishness of humans, we may get too close to the sun. And like I said, we all know what happens to things when they do. Now, another question appears. So how should we grow? And that is a question of great importance, one asked for decades by many. The world's most famous economists, professionalists, and development investigators write books and articles debating and interrogating over it. When asked, how should we grow? Politicians will tell you about electric vehicles, sustainable clothing, a perfect win-win for all. They will tell us, don't worry. We just have to unleash our potential. We have to let innovation save us. We have to let new ideas roam. We have to grow green. But I think we don't. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that green growth is bad. Of course, driving an electric car is better than driving a combustion engine one. What I'm trying to say is that we should rather focus on limiting growth rather than transforming it into another version. We should rather focus on developing an economy that does not produce useless goods, but reuses what we already have. Right now, we take materials from the earth, we make them into products, we use those products, and we throw the rest away. I believe that limiting the first step taking is vital for further existence. Instead, we ought to loop the middle processes, making and using. I also believe that a transformation to green growth would take too much time, and we are in too deep in the problem of climate change. So our generation has to choose. We can be green and reusing, or we can be growing. And we cannot be both, because more growth cannot stop growth. You see, we all seem to be living by this idea of the 21st century inherently rooted in the human nature of selfishness and self-comfort. We all seem to be living by this idea of prioritizing our own ease. And I'm not trying to blame anyone for this. I simply notice that most of us put their own comfort before most things. Yes, we are aware that the planet is collapsing, but we still want to take that long warm bath. We still waste a plastic bag every time we shop for food. And we still take a plane each time we go for a holiday, because that's just how it is and that's just who we are. Most humans value their own pleasure so much that they would rather have the world fall down than take a bike instead of a car. And for that exact reason, I believe that the growth of the economy, and certainly the growth of humanity, is astonishingly hard to slow down. It's as if that plane of growth on which we are all still on didn't have a pilot that can safely land it. And it's up to the passengers to walk up to the cockpit and perform a job that they have never been trained to do. But they would rather sit in their seats, be comfortable, close their eyes, and not see the flames of the sun that are dancing on the wings. They would rather sit in their own seats, indulge in their pleasure, and not care about a bigger picture of the world. And I am not here to propose some miraculous plan that will keep the planet forever prosperous. In truth, like most, I don't have a clue where this is all going. What I do know, though, is that this may be the last possible moment to turn it all around. This, and for that exact reason, this may be the most important time for humanity. This may be the most important time for humanity, because if we ever are to get uncomfortable and walk up to that metaphorical cockpit, it is now. This may be the most important time for humanity, because if we don't change the way that we are growing right now, soon there will be no humanity to grow for. Thank you.